Hey everybody, Chris here with Hollywood Haunter, and today I'm with Derek, the creator of VanOaks Cemetery, a creepy, haunted graveyard, and he is going to show us just how he does some of this little secret tips and tricks to make this happy haunt materialize. So let's go check it out. So Derek, these columns are amazing. Tell us about them. How did you make them? What are they made out of?
So it's a plywood inside. There's a seam here.
Okay.
And then there's a seam here. Actually, I can
Oh, whoa, that makes it nice for storing, huh? And then this top up here, you said it's wood, and then it's foam.
And then the base of it is ply.
Okay.
So it's foam screwed into ply. The hard coat on this is actually a combination of acrylic polymer medium and joint compound, which is something that I saw online for a really nice hard coat, and it's relatively durable.
Yeah.
More so than I've found with like Monster Mud or just Drylok on its own.
It almost has like a cement or like a stucco type of texture to it, so that's pretty cool.
Totally. And for covering up the wood too, I felt like having something a little bit more substantial would result in a longer shelf life for these guys.
Are those bricks individually glued on?
They are.
Man.
So we took a sheet of 1-inch foam and cut it down into 1/2-inch pieces.
Yeah.
And then cut it down into brick sizes.
Wow.
And then rounded every edge, beveled every corner, and then heat treated them and then glued them on one by one.
Did you double up behind some of them so that they protruded from the rest of them?
We intentionally made some of them stand out because that's just how like old bricklaying works. So these are thicker. I have my and my wife's initials in the columns because that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, little Easter eggs.
And then if you look here on this other column, we did like an established date of when the cemetery first came to be.
That's old.
Part of our backstory.
Are the bricks coated with the same thing as the thing up there?
No, the bricks are just Drylok. I really wanted to keep all of the texture that you get from heating it with the torch and water. And I felt like if we went heavy like this, you'd get more of this like pebbled, look to it. And even the Drylok kind of covered up a lot of it. You can almost see some of the brush strokes in it too. Okay. But I feel like this brick's a great example. If we had gone to something heavier, you wouldn't get any of that pitting or any of the like deep notches in it. That part's not really handled that much. So Drylok is more than sufficient to keep it protected from the elements and from bumping into things.
So are these things pretty heavy?
They're not too bad.
Okay.
I could lift it by myself, but it's safer to do it with two people. But this top piece fits inside the bottom piece for easier storage. And then the center piece is hollow. This one's empty. The other one has the guts that runs the entire haunt.
So that column is kind of like your master command center or your... That's awesome.
Yeah, so the inside of the columns houses a flicker box that controls the 2 lamps on top of the columns. It controls an Arduino, which powers all of our moving tombstones and the moving shovel. Then there's the RCA jack box that controls all the lighting. And I think a power strip, because each of the moving props needs to have its own wall power. I literally roll it out, set it down, plug it in, done.
That's one thing that you have set up really nicely is the speed in which you can connect all your cables and plug things in. That's so nice versus like screw terminals and like old.
It's like the one thing because setting up a graveyard like ours is you could do it in an afternoon. If you know where you want things to go and how many pieces you've got, you can bang it out really quickly. The part that always took the longest was lighting. And so I started using little RCA jack connectors, like you'd use for plugging in a stereo. And I thought, well, that's like, if I can just figure out how to make a box to support more than one cord at a time, then everything else is just going to be quick plug in and done. And so all of that is inside of these columns.
Okay.
So I can just like run a couple of speaker cords inside of it, and that feeds every light, every candle, every pumpkin, every lantern, and it's all low voltage.
Cool. Did you just buy these lights, or did you have to modify them at all to get them to mount on top of the columns there?
I found one at Home Depot, and they only had one in stock, but I really liked the style of it. So then I went online and searched through like every Home Depot in Southern California to try and find the second one. And when I did, it wasn't the same finish.
Oh, really?
So like the first one was black and the second one was brown with a crackle paint finish.
Weird.
I don't know why. My wife, who was born and raised in Vermont, took me out back east to see the cemeteries, which are like everywhere. And everything back east, because of the salt water and whatever, it's like so much patina.
Yeah.
So everything's like blue-green and brass. So when we put on the emblems, when we redid the faux finish on the lamps, I was like, let's go heavy with the patina. Like, let's do something that's a little different, that's not typical to Southern California.
Do they just have like a flicker bulb in there, or did you wire something up in there?
No, they're actually run off of a small flicker box that I had purchased quite a few years ago.
Okay.
And it's, one plug in, two plugs out. And so there's a cord that runs between the two columns that allows for the lights to flicker, but they're just standard incandescent bulbs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's nice too, because the flicker box, you can control how much.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Where did you get that at? Like,
I wish I could tell you.
I want one. This emblem now, this is pretty cool.
I had seen an old, like turn of the century advertisement for Poison.
Okay.
And I really like the style of lettering, and I'm a graphic artist by trade, so I was able to kind of take some of that style and apply it into a logo that was custom for us.
It's really cool.
And this is what we came up with.
I like it. And how long did it take for that to print?
That I don't know. I actually farmed it out to somebody else to print it.
Oh, okay.
I was not quite into 3D printing yet. So, yeah, they just sent it back to me, and...
Did it have quite a bit of prepping still to do, or did they do most of that for you?
It did. It had
Yeah.
a lot, and then I ended up casting it and then molding it. It was faster to prep resin than it was to prep the 3D printed material.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah, because resin sands so much nicer. So the gates are, I don't think, any big secret to anybody that's done a little bit of home haunting. It's PVC pipe and some 1x strips of wood. And then my good friends, Hollywood Haunter, went ahead and handled some welding for me so that they could be permanently mounted to the columns, which also add an extra level of security for us, because we knew that they broke into three pieces. But now that they're connected,
it kind of locks them
can't
together.
come apart.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Derek, this connection point's really cool. I like how it just plops right down onto it, huh?
Yeah, it makes it really easy for setup, and I don't think people pay
Yeah.
that much attention to it to realize they could just
That's
and go.
awesome.
But it makes it easy. Although I will say this, like, these are pretty tight fits, so when we do set up, I actually have to hammer them in with a mallet to get them to really seat
Yeah.
right, but
No, I really like that.
in the end it works well, and it's nice too because they can bend in either direction.
Oh, very cool. Where do you get the finials from on the top of that?
The finials come from a place called King Metal Supplies. I want to say they're in Orange County, California, and it's kind of everybody's go-to for the reproduction plastic
Yeah.
finials. With a heat gun, you can melt the PVC to really get them on there, and they
Okay.
lock into place really well once they come back down from being heated up.
You even have like little weld marks like on your little rings down there. That's crazy. How'd you do that?
It's those dumb details that only haunters would notice. It's hot glue.
That is a detail that I haven't seen, and I know I haven't done on any of the past fences that I've created.
Well, and it was a
That's really
combination
cool.
of things. So last year before setup, the gates were like the last thing that I worked on, and I didn't have time to drill out each piece and make sure that they were screwed in, so I literally just hot glued every piece in. And that's how they've stayed.
idea.
And I think this year the glue's gotten just a bit brittle enough from the high heats we get in the summer that it's kind of given up a bit of its adhesive qualities. So I'll have to fix that.
I know that you just use carriage bolts, but they actually kind of look just like the old, like the gate, the rivets on like some of the old gates. So that's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, it was definitely a happy accident. It wasn't something that I think we had intentionally done.
Yeah.
But there it was, and who might have turned down something that like, looks really authentic.
It's crazy how real those things look. I mean, your grout lines and everything, you just really, you're aging. I mean, it honestly does not look like a prop to me. I mean,
tell you what, every Halloween since we've had these, there's been somebody that's walked up to it and leaned into it, and it's tipped just ever so slightly, just enough for them to realize it's not real.
Yeah.
And then they apologize for it really, really heavily. And we go, no, it's the greatest compliment that you could pay us that you thought this was real.
That's a real lock right there.
It is, yeah. I actually have the skeleton key on my key ring.
That is awesome. Look at this. Your props don't even have to be plugged in. They all just work.
It's true. It's all true.
So everybody out there, this is a great idea. Make your props not run on any electricity or power of any sorts. Make them haunted.
So a few years ago, I had found an old Tombstone radio somewhere, and I'd always liked them. They remind me of Halloween for some reason, and so it's just been in the house collecting dust. And for the last few years, I've been toying around with this idea of like, how do I make this into something that can be in the haunt? And I just thought, what if it was a way for the spirits to like talk from the other side? Kind of thing, but they would do it through music.
Yeah.
I took the radio, I gutted the entire thing, and then built in a little platform to have 3 light sockets with old Edison bulbs in it that I painted to look like fuses and or vacuum tubes, I should say, and then got an old cord for it and set it out here. And so every so many minutes during the time that the haunt is running, the radio comes alive. So there's like a sound effect that sort of announces that it's about to happen. You can hear kind of ghosts whispering that sort of moves from left to right or right to left in the yard. And then the radio kind of fires up. You hear the static, and it's like a slow build. And then all of a sudden a song starts playing, but it's not always a happy song. Sometimes it's a little twisted, it's a little weird, or it's a phrase that kind of gets altered.
That's really cool.
I can't control the spirits. They say whatever they want to say, but they say it about every 8 minutes. So we were thinking like maybe we should make it so that it can be triggered like by smartphone or remote control or something, so that when people are like standing over there looking at the radio like, oh, was it going to do something? What's going on? And just be able to hit a button and have it fire off.
Well, hey, it builds up the suspense, right?
2019, everybody. Don't hold me to it.
How do you make these tombstones quake?
How much time do you have, kid? So anyone that knows me knows that I love Disney's Haunted Mansion. All-time favorite ride. I could go to the park and ride that ride and nothing else and would leave a happy customer. Anyhow, I always wanted tombstones that moved. I just thought it would be great. I decided that I would figure out how to make that happen. And so there's 2 moving tombstones and there's a moving shovel, and they're all powered with small reindeer motors. But each one of the mechanisms was built so that it kind of be self-contained, because I didn't want to have like wires hanging out or armatures or have to dig them into the ground or anything like that. So this one's on a small platter that just rotates left to right, and there's a reindeer motor with a couple pieces of aluminum flat stock that just push and pull.
Oh, that's cool.
So this gets a left and right motion. The other tombstone over here that moves, it moves back and forth, which was a little bit more difficult to solve for, because I wanted to get a certain amount of tip so that when people were standing in front of it, it wouldn't be like too subtle for them.
Yeah.
So I really wanted it to have like a heavy pitch forward, and I couldn't do it without the whole thing falling over.
Okay.
The weight of the foam was like too much.
Yeah, yeah.
So I ended up having to make a small adjustment to my original plan of making it like completely self-contained. So there's a small armature that sticks out of the back that gives it just enough room to make the motion without it being like too forward heavy. Like everything's hidden down inside of the base. Which
Yeah.
is, you know, everything's just made of foam, and then it's on an MDF base.
Since they're reindeer motors, do they sometimes do that thing where they reset and they go back and forth, or are yours pretty much like balanced out to where they will just continue their...
It was a lot of trial and error, and I probably went through more flat stock aluminum than I really would have wanted to, but I finally figured out the math to get them so that they wouldn't go into that reverse cycle.
Okay.
The downside, though, because they're not the outdoor rated reindeer motors, they're the ones without the white sealed case.
Okay.
And so the motors can get a little finicky because of the weather.
Oh.
So if they're like too cold, or if it's been damp the night before, or it's damp the night of, they can kind of bind up a little bit. But that's what graphite spray is for.
Dude, what's going on over here? You got some prop doing landscaping.
Yeah, this is our crowd favorite. It's the thing that people ask the most about, and it's, I think, the one thing that like catches everyone's eye. It is our moving shovel. Small reindeer motor, small linkage inside of it that's mounted directly to the back side of the shovel, and it's hidden inside of a fake tree stump. So that way it's like something that you would typically like lean a shovel against, and so I don't think people are expecting anything from it. It's just sort of there, and then all of a sudden it starts moving. And so it's powered by the Arduino that's inside of the column, and what happens is that this lantern starts to light up. And this year we put in like a really high wattage bulb so that it was really eye-catching.
Okay.
And then the shovel starts rocking back and forth.
That's
and
so
it goes on
cool.
for a couple of seconds and then it stops. And it's like just one of those gags that's long enough for people to be like, did I see something out of the corner of my eye? And then they look and then it's moving and it's like, oh, like, you know,
yeah.
I think people aren't expecting stuff like that. They just think it's tombstones and that's nice and whatever. And then there's like a couple of those elements that move that I think is an unexpected surprise for people that they really like. So I found the shovel somewhere, like Craigslist or something like that. And the first thing I did was chopped off like the bottom 4 inches of it because I needed it to look like it was in the ground. And the original concept was that the lantern was going to hang off of the shovel. But the problem was that the reindeer motor doesn't have enough torque to pull it back. So it would push it out, and then you just hear it like struggling to move back. Although I'm sure I could swap it out for like a windshield wiper motor and then just really slow down the RPMs on it.
You just need to rig up a lawnmower next, and you can have these ghosts do all your yard work.
If there was a yard to do it in, I mean, this California drought's killing all of us, especially our lawn.
I'm surprised you haven't put some empty PVC pipe wall running through the yard, and you have your cables that you just run in there every year. And
yeah.
You're like, that's a detail.
I'm a crazy Halloween person, but I'm
not that crazy.
This
is awesome.
This I can take no credit for. So when I first met my wife and I explained to her what a Halloween nut I was, she said, well, that's great. Like, Halloween's cool. I like Halloween. I'd like to build something. And I said, okay, cool. What do you want to build? She said, a life-size statue. And I said, okay, well, here's how people do it. Like, here's links to videos and blog posts and whatever. And she said, that's cool. I've got it figured out. Just watch. And I said, okay, cool. And that's what came out of it.
That
Very
is
first prop
awesome.
she ever made. And I was floored by how good it was.
Yeah. I mean, the way that she had the cloth all wrinkled and stuff,
Yeah.
I mean, it looks...
The draping.
It's really, really well done.
When we were working on it, like, everything about it is, like, based off of her measurements. So, like, the length from the hip bones to the knees, like, that's based off of her legs. Like, the pose, we took pictures from every angle so we knew what it looked like.
Yeah.
We spent hours bending PVC to, like, really get a really organic shape out
Yes.
of it. Because I feel like the one thing that sets apart a lot of Monster Mud statues is that people kind of just go, well, here's a piece and here's a piece and now
Yes.
it's a shoulder.
Yes.
But our shoulders aren't like that.
Right.
Human shoulders aren't like that.
No, it has a
So,
lifelike proportion. I mean,
everything's
it's...
got a bend. The spine has a big S curve in it. But so it's a combination of it's PVC and chicken wire and expanding foam. She carved the hands out of foam, and then the head is just a wig head from the beauty supply shop. And then we went to the Salvation Army and found the dress is a bed sheet,
Okay.
The shirt is just a woman's shirt, and then the hood and cape was some like crushed velvet velour type fabric that I had from another project, and we just like went at it full steam. And it's the one thing that everybody goes, is that a person?
It's gonna jump out at me?
It's gonna move at some point. I know it. I feel it coming. And we call her Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Because the company that makes the PVC pipe is called Charlotte.
That's awesome.
And we just kept looking at it, and it just kept saying Charlotte. And my parents were out for a visit a couple of Halloweens ago when we were making her, and my dad referred to her as Charlotte, and it's just, she's been Charlotte ever since.
What about the base? Is that just foam?
The base is all 2-inch pink foam.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love the way it's aged and chipped up, and it really looks awesome.
Yeah.
Is she the hardest thing to store?
Pretty much. She's the biggest thing to store aside from the columns.
Yeah.
But truth be told, like if you love Halloween like we do, to go into the garage when you're trying to do laundry or something and you're like, we did that. That's awesome. Nobody else has that. Like, it's a pretty rewarding thing to like look at it and be like, yeah, it's a couple of years old, but she's still holding up.
Just relax. Just relax. You've worked hard all Halloween. Ooh, how's that feel? Nothing? How many tombstones do you have in this display?
We'll have to cut, and then I will tell you, because I don't know off the top of my head. But there's 15 in total.
That's crazy. So that's like, what, 1,000 hours worth of labor?
I don't know if it's that much. I think once you get a feel for like carving tombstones in whatever method you use, I think you can really like crank it out. The carving part actually isn't the longest part for me. It's the like figuring out what the name is and what the dates should be, and if there should be like a longer epitaph. And then as a graphic artist, I'm always like, well, you know, what does it look like? And then it's spending hours looking through reference photos of like stuff I've either already collected or going online and like looking at photos from Highbury Cemetery or Evergreen or like any of these places where it's, you know, like really old and really dense and haven't been cared for. Once I've nailed down the shape and what it should say and what that looks like, we'll probably do it in like a couple hours.
Just come over for dinner one night and pump a bunch out while we're watching a little TV.
Sure.
The amount of shadowing and the way that you paint those cracks, it looks better than a lot of the ones I've seen. Like the crack's not totally black, and then you also do almost like a lighter color around it to where it just really pops at nighttime in the lighting. I like how you put a right amount of grass. You didn't get too crazy with the moss and stuff, but you got a little bit on there to give it that extra creepy feeling. Your tombstones are so awesome that they look like legit during the day, not just at night, but in the daytime, they're pretty awesome.
It's one of those weird things where like I'm always like, it's got to look good both times because it's in more daylight than it is the darkness.
Yeah.
And the darkness hides a lot of your crimes. But like with this one, like this is my favorite tombstone. It's I think aside from Charlotte, it's the largest one that we have, but it's kind of like it uses a bunch of different techniques. So like the first thing that I'd love to show off about this kind of feels like the bat phone almost. But,
yeah.
This is just a garden statue that I picked up in the clearance rack at my local Osh and gave it a new paint job because again, that like New Englandy patinaed, heavy aging kind of look. And then the rest of it's like 2-inch foam, which this was 3 inches of foam that was then carved down to get that curve, and the top portion was routed out with a big router bit to get like these little decorative edges and stuff, and then given that same blowtorch and water treatment to give it, you know, some real grit and stone look. And then like this part down here was something that I'd seen in a reference photo because I love reference photos, and I changed out the name. This one's for my grandparents who are no longer with us, but I wanted it to kind of have that metal like cast bronze look to it, so I carved it out of 1-inch foam and routed out the center parts, and then hit it with like a dark brown, like shades of dark brown, and then went back with rub and buff and just hit all the high spots because like that's the part that gets the most wear when people come up to things, they want to like touch a nose or touch the feathers or touch the lettering and whatever. So, you know, that's kind of the part that has that sort of metallic sheen to it, which I think kind of sells it in the daylight, and looks great at night as well.
How did you route those letters so clean? I mean, and this, because especially the part I'm focusing on is the flat part around the letters.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, after I had done, it's the Thaddeus tombstone in our display, which is the first tombstone I did that had raised letters, I realized that the little router cup that you can get with your Dremel tool, which is designed for, I think, clearing out grout lines in tile, is good to a certain degree. Like, it's okay for doing small pieces, but if you're doing anything that's like a big span, you got to have something for the Dremel to lay flat against. So what I did was I took a piece of acrylic that I had laying around and I drilled a big hole through the center of it, and then I super glued the Dremel router cup to that, which now gave me like a 2-foot span, so I could do really wide things without the Dremel wanting to dip into the foam and gouge it out. So when it came to this, I didn't need the 2-foot version. So I found that I had another piece of acrylic laying around, and so I made like a 6-inch version. And that's like my go-to now. Anytime I need to do something that's got like raised lettering that's relatively small like this, it was a lot easier to have like a bigger platform and then just take your time. You know, like Dremel makes a ton of smaller size bits, so when you get into some of the smaller letterings, like it doesn't all have to be the 194. You know, everybody loves the 194 bit because it's the most utility of them all. But like they make a smaller one if you really want to get detailed, which, you know, if that's your thing.
Derek, that is awesome. I've been, ever since I saw your video where you show that, I've been wanting to make one. You know, like even for my big routers, like for some of the stuff I do with the big routers, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. It's almost like an inverted CNC machine, except you are the thing that's moving it.
Exactly. And what's cool about it being acrylic is you can see through it. Right. Whereas I have set up things like that in the past with some MDF or something, and I'm like, man, I hope I'm doing it right.
Yeah. So this was another new tombstone that we added this year. I happened to have this like Big Lots dollar store urn that I'd been kicking around the garage for 2 years. Like I routed out a hole into the foam and glued it in there. And then this is just like a piece of like plastic
bracelet ring or something, or
that I heat gunned until it was pliable and shaped it, and then slapped it on there and gorilla glued it and kept it in place.
That is so awesome, Derek. I've seen people mount a lot of different things to tombstones, but that looks really clean. It looks legit. Do you use the PVC pipe with the rebar pounded in the ground method?
Yeah. It's really the best way to keep them standing upright. And
yeah.
Because you never really get the rebar completely straight up and down, you're always kind of wrenching them into place.
Yeah.
And it makes them harder if people were to come and try to walk off with it.
Absolutely.
So it's part deterrent, but also keeps them upright really well.
What's going on here? It looks like you got a cobweb that is actually strong enough to live on its own.
We had this idea of using fishing line to try and give the hot glue cobweb something to stick to, because otherwise you're just spraying hot glue everywhere and crossing your fingers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this is probably like an old trick to many people, but for us it was like, oh, is that gonna work? Like, could we do that? And we tried it and it worked. And then unfortunately, like, our stock of glue had spoiled to the point where it was just coming out in globs. So we got one lone cobweb in the haunt this year. It made no sense. But so there's a fishing line cobweb.
You're like, that's it.
With hot glue.
The spider in Derek's yard is kind of he's very lazy.
He's lazy like the maid.
Now you have a really scary lady that pokes her little melon right in that window right there.
Yeah, she is the maid who does a terrible job at cleaning and will never leave the haunt. Yeah, her name is Rona, and she is, as the kids in the neighborhood call her, the lady. And she's a favorite, but she's a projection that we made some years ago. I worked in video production and had access to a studio and camera equipment and stuff, and so I had a friend dress up and do the whole thing. We just acted out a couple different scenes, and that is what is in the window now. It's great, and I'd love to update it so it's like really high def and looks really good, because you know, some years ago that I filmed it and it's like not the greatest quality. But I know if I change it, the neighborhood kids would be really mad. So
where's Rona?
I'm stuck.
Rona's not doing what she used to do.
I guarantee you somebody would walk by and be like, that's not the same lady.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would have to either be like something completely different and just hope that the kids have forgotten.
Yeah.
Or I'd have to find someone who looks just like that person that's like a spitting image.
Have you ever thought of having Rona go from that window all the way across through that window?
I have thought about it, and I'm sure there's ways to do it where like you get the projectors to all run
Be
from like a similar
synchronized.
source or something like that. But the truth is, like, we still have to live in this house.
You want to look out some windows?
Halloween is fine out here. Inside, maybe a little less Halloween, so that it's not just like every day for 2 weeks is like Halloween, Halloween. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Plus, you also don't want to live in a black box, probably, or a dark
yeah, 'cause
box.
it's like, you know, like each one of these rooms it has a use.
Yeah.
You know, to like take them over for the better part of 2 weeks would be.
Well, yeah. Fill it
really
with
difficult.
projectors and decorations. Go get in a hotel for the month. Now, that as far as the projector, now is it a very fancy projector that runs?
Not by today's standards. I think when I bought it originally, it was like middle high side of like what you could buy that wasn't crazy expensive. They definitely make better projectors now that I think may improve the overall quality.
For the screen, to use like a sheet or a shower curtain?
So
Or?
what I ended up doing was I built a frame that fit the inside of the window because it's recessed on the inside of the house. So I built a frame that just slides in, and it has actual like rear screen projection material on it.
Oh, cool.
Although if I knew then what I know now, I totally would have just bought a shower curtain from like the
That's
dollar
really
store,
cool.
because it's kind of the same. This was something that I had seen on a trip with my parents a few years back. We had taken a driving trip and happened upon an old cemetery that had these like really ornate, like very high guards. We like jokingly call it the baby fence. It's like a crib almost for this tombstone. But what I decided was like I really wanted to do something that was kind of Gothic looking and really unusual. Like I don't think I've ever seen any haunt in Southern California do something like this. But so I went out, I found a piece of, you know, cast iron fencing material. I made a mold of it. I made many copies of it.
Yeah.
And then
It's crazy.
aged them to look, you know, rusted out and whatnot. And then found, like, buy them off the shelf at Home Depot, stair posts to act as the corner pieces so that I could mount them all together. And then the whole thing comes apart. There's just like little drop-in parts, and then they all kind of hold each other up, and then when the season's over, just pop them out, stow them away.
It looks amazing. It looks like a real metal fence. I mean, and you also, the way that you painted it really sells that it's not
so
just
it's like it's absolutely a play off of a video that you and Gina had made using the satin cinnamon colored Rust-Oleum paint to rust out your lanterns. And I took that idea and kind of took another step with it. Basically the way that I did the texture and the finish on it was that it's a combination of like a base coat of the multicolored texture paint from Rust-Oleum, and then I mist it down with a spray bottle of water and sprinkle coarse salt over it, and then hit it with the sort of rusty colored paint, and then brush all the salt off of it, and it leaves this really weird mottled rusty look to it that I think really sells it.
Absolutely.
Like even up close it looks
That's so
pretty
awesome.
legitimate. And to be able to do that same technique on both resin and wood
Is
and have
neat.
it still work was a pretty happy surprise. But I also wanted to do something special for Hallowed Haunting Grounds, which was like the haunt that started the obsession for me. And I'd only seen it 1 year, which is the funny thing. Like,
That's crazy.
to be there
Derek.
once and to have it made a
Impact like
lifelong
that.
impact,
Yeah.
kind of says something for the people who haven't seen it. But so the crib goes around the Hallowed Haunting Grounds memorial tombstone, and then it also gives us an opportunity to put a red lantern for Gary Korb, who was the brains behind Hallowed Haunting Grounds. And I think may have been the person to originate the sort of pendulum floating lantern effect for a home haunt. And so we hang that out every year for him, and especially now that he's passed over to the other side. So this is it's a favorite of mine. I think I have a soft spot for what it stands for.
Yeah.
I think it looks nice. Everything here is homemade, with the exception of like the pumpkins and some of the floodlights. But like everything else we've made with our own two hands. And it's like one of the things that we pride ourselves on, because you can go to so many stores now and just like buy stuff. And I think it's great. Like if that's how you celebrate Halloween, I'm giving you the thumbs up. But for me, like part of what I really enjoyed about Halloween growing up was how there was like an artistry to it. So in carrying on that kind of tradition, we've made everything, including our lights and candles. All the lights are like 10 millimeter LEDs. They're like the little high powered LEDs, and they're fit inside of PVC parts that you can get in the hot water heater section of your local home store, and they're all wired up to the little RCA connectors. I made a mold of like 2 different candles and figured out how to like wire them up so that they have little flicker lights inside of it, and so those also are run off the same RCA connector setup, and they're great because it's like just enough light, you get just enough flicker. It's like the candles are inset enough that you don't actually see the light bulb or anything like that to give away the gag.
Does are the candles transparent enough where they actually glow themselves, or
do? Yeah, that was
cool.
Like one of the biggest considerations when I was picking out what kind of resin to use.
Yeah.
In the molds. I went to my local smooth-on shop and I was like, this is what I want to do. What's going to pass the most light without being like completely clear?
That's awesome.
And they had made a suggestion, and I bought that product, and that's what I've been using ever since. And it passes just enough light that you get that really warm glow and can actually see the flicker.
Yeah.
Of the little LED bulb. But
yeah.
They're great, and I absolutely love them. It's like one of my favorite things.
Yeah, no, they're really cool. Yeah. I actually got a couple of those candles at a White Elephant at one of the Halloween parties that everybody tried to steal from me.
They're very popular.
I see some lightning lights up there on the roof.
Yeah, so thanks to the folks at Lights Alive, I have one of their thunder boxes, which I can't think of what they call it, but it's one of their like high wattage, flashing, outdoor rated effects boxes, and then the system itself is run off of their Firefly unit, which I just think is the best for doing lightning effects. A few years back I had found that there was a company making these really small outdoor rated RGB floodlights that could be controlled through an app, which I just thought was the coolest thing, because it's like if you don't want to get into DMX, which seems like really overwhelming to me, and I consider myself like a relatively technical person, to be able to just like be shown a color wheel and you just drag your finger to wherever you want, and then it locks in, and every time they fire back up it's still at that color. And they were dirt cheap. They're like $13-ish a piece, and the amount of color they put out is like ridiculous. And they're they're cool. LED, so it's like low cost power.
Yeah.
Really functional, and they're small enough that you can hide them in places. So like the urn on the ground beside me here hides a light that's designed just for the tombstone with the bust on top. Like that's the only reason it's there, but that's how small they are, and they really put off a ton of light. I think they've really like made the display look so much better.
Oh yeah, that's
before
really
it was like
cool.
par cans and bulbs and gels and stuff like that, and it just you'd have to mount them somewhere, and it was always a bit of a mess. And these are so small, and it's like a single C-clamp mount, and it's like there's 2, one in each corner of the yard, a couple that splash up on the front of the house, and then this one that lights this monument, and that's it. Like it's a ton of color.
That's cool. So since you can control it from your phone, can you turn this whole haunt off then from your phone, or?
I can, yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so because of like the smart home and all the like smart outlets and stuff like that, I just looked into it because before we were just using a timer, like an old-fashioned timer, which is great. You know, it does its job, turns on, turns off, no problems. But like this season, we had a couple people say, well, we're like 5 minutes away and it's really close to the time that you guys are going to shut off. Like, can you keep the lights on for us? And if I'm not here to do it, there's like no way for that to happen if it's the traditional style timer. So with the smart plugs, which is basically how all this stuff is like powered up now, I could just say, well, you know, run it for another 10 minutes.
That's
and then
really nice. That's
or if I wanted to
super
turn it on right now, I could turn it on right now.
What do you got going on for sound on this thing?
So the way that we run our sound, we basically have 4 small amplifiers. They're not very powerful. I think they're 40 watts each, because we want to be nice to our neighbors and not drive them crazy because we're set up for 2 weeks out of the month. But so we run a couple different soundtracks, and again, custom made. So we have a soundtrack that's just the sounds of thunder and rain and like atmospheric stuff. So you might hear like birds and bells off in the distance and crickets and those types of things. And so that's on one pair of speakers. We have a music bed that plays through another set of speakers. And then the haunted radio has its own dedicated speaker, and it's just a single mono speaker, but that's it.
Dude, that is awesome. That bag, it looks like a big pizza delivery container, but not full of pizza, but full of cool stuff. That is neat. That's totally waterproof, isn't it?
I don't know that it's waterproof, but it's definitely, I mean, it's weatherish proof.
Okay.
It was enough that I felt like I could put stuff in it, and if it did rain or whatever, it wasn't going to get too messed up. It's just like a road case for a musician.
That is
threw a couple
awesome.
shelves in, and so it's got, you know, each of these amps have a SD card reader in them. So if I need to swap out the audio really fast, I can just pull the card, take it inside, throw it back in, and it's good to go. But so, you know, each one's dedicated to music, radio, rain and thunder noises, ghost noises, and then the Lights Alive Firefly for the
lightning?
the
Yeah,
lightning.
that's cool.
And it's deep enough because there's like a couple things in the back too that control the radio. It's just
Okay.
like a small color organ to
Yeah.
change the brightness of the lights inside of the radio to sync with the music. It's like super old school. It's like one of the first things I ever bought when I got into haunting. It's the little like lightning in a box. You plug in
Yeah.
the CD player to one thing and then you plug in the light to the other. I never threw it away, and they're like in high demand, and so you can't find them anywhere. But I was able to use that to actually get the radio to work this year, which was a happy accident for me because I had the idea but could never figure out like how it was actually going to work. But yeah, and you know, there's a small power strip in here too, so like everything that's plugged out in the yard starts here, and then it's just one single plug, and then that's connected to the smart outlet. So
That's
one touch
so
of the
cool.
phone and everything lights up.
Very cool.
Yeah, this may be overkill for our small yard, but I really like it.
Yeah, so
I mean, who doesn't like fog?
no, that's awesome. Now, do you, is that thing cooled down so you have like ground fog, or it just goes in the sky, or how?
No, so like oddly enough, our neighborhood is quiet and we're in the middle of the block, but there's just enough wind that makes it a little bit dangerous for trick-or-treaters. So like the first year that I had purchased this fog machine, I ran it and it like ghosted out the street. All you could see were like headlights, and I thought, well, somebody's gonna get run over. Like there's gonna be an accident. So I thought, okay, well, less fog, maybe chilled fog. Then the winds would kick up just enough, and it would either like blow it in the opposite direction of the yard, or like back down the driveway, or anywhere other than where we wanted it to go. And so like most years we don't run it at all. But this year, oddly enough, like it was just still enough to run fog, and we ran fog last night. So it was
That's
pretty
cool.
great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you use a scent? Are you more like a pumpkin spice or a rotting corpse kind of guy?
It's funny. I had looked into doing scented fog, but I thought scented fog is like kind of heavy-handed, and especially if we can't get the fog machine to act right, like if it's not going to push the fog the way we want it to, then my neighbors house is going to smell like, haunted house or creepy
Yeah.
forest or
Yeah.
whatever. And I'd actually looked into like the small oil diffusers like Tim at the farm uses for his haunt, because I thought, well, that's something small
Yeah.
and I can put it in the middle of the yard.
Yeah.
And then completely forgot about it. Never used it.
That's
So
awesome.
It's sitting inside still in the box with like a handful of different scents that maybe next year.
Yeah, totally. Gina would like that, definitely. That's her favorite part.
It is, yeah.
Well, Derek, thank you so much for showing us around and teaching us how you did everything. We really appreciate it. And if any of you want to get more details on just how Derek did all this magic, he has some awesome YouTube videos, whether it's faux painting, the foam carving, and even the lighting. He's got some stuff on that. So you can find him at VanOaks Prop Foundry on YouTube.
Yep.
And then what's some other social media they can find you at?
Well, you can find our haunt Instagram account at VanOaks Cemetery, and you can find all of our other like prop making and stuff like that at VanOaks Prop Foundry, both on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome.
And that's about it. It is awesome.
It's so awesome.
So awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Do you want to rub our shoulders? You're not gonna believe what this video looks like.